Well, good evening, folks. That sucked. Excuse my use of that term. Iowa losing at home 78-75 to the Wisconsin Badgers. And what a weird game. We're going to get to it. We're going to have Coach Close, Gary Close, former Iowa assistant coach, Gary Close, joining us in a moment. I'll say this. Let's get this out of the way first. And you're welcome to call. I'm not going to be taking any phone calls on the phone line for a while. All right. You're welcome to join. We've got the link to join in the description below. I'll also throw it up in the live chat. Okay. So everybody is welcome to call in by means of the StreamYard link. Make sure this is in the live chat. There it goes. All right. So that's the link to call in, folks. Let me just say this first. Very proud of the fight of this team. I don't want to sound like a coach here, but very proud of the fight of this team in the final minute and a half of this game. You know, you're down 8, and I'll admit I thought the game was over. I was at the game. Coach Close was at the game. It looked from my vantage point to be over at that point. Which is disappointing because Iowa had a 6-point lead a couple different times in that second half and could just never extend the lead from 6. And I give Wisconsin a lot of credit, the way they play defense, the way they grind out on the offensive end. It's not always pretty, but they find a way. They shot the 3 horrendously bad today, Wisconsin did, and yet found a way to keep Iowa within reaching distance in that second half. And eventually, I know some fans in the arena were pretty darn upset with Fran's use of a certain lineup, and you probably know who that lineup is at a critical point in that second half. Look, the lineup was actually decent in that first half. Iowa's thin right now with Aaron Eulis out and Chris Murray out. They don't have confidence. Clearly, they don't have confidence in the 2 bigs, and certainly this is a game that you have to be sound on both ends because Wisconsin's just going to. They're just going to beat you at the fundamentals, and they're going to beat you physically. I guess you could make the argument that maybe you throw Josh Agundale in there for a spurt. He never saw the floor tonight. But just proud of the fight of this team when you blow that 6-point lead a couple different times, and then you're down 8 in the final minute to a minute and a half, and you find a way to claw your way into overtime. And you can say, well, it was a miracle. I said the same thing. That was a miracle. Well, good pressure by Tony Perkins. Great play by TP. You kick it out to Patrick, who makes a huge 3 at a huge time. All right. Patrick McCaffrey was spectacular late in the game, late in the regulation. He was really good in overtime. And I just, it's just one of those things. Iowa could not come up with stops in overtime. That's all there is to it. They couldn't get stops in overtime. I mean, the entire game, Iowa, I thought defensively was really good. And I don't know what Wisconsin's field goal percentage was prior to overtime, but in regulation, I would guess it was, again, I don't know how many shots they got up in overtime, but I'm guessing it was certainly less than 50. I know they ended up just above 50% from the field for the game when all was said and done. But Iowa defensively, I thought was pretty good most of this game. But again, in overtime, Iowa had it at 2, had it at 3. I don't know how many times they pushed the lead to 2 or 3. Got a stop on the first possession of regulation, the Hawkeyes did. And basically scored. I mean, I'm going to go through the play-by-play here in a minute once we get our first caller on the line. But you get lead after lead after lead, up 2, up 3, and just could never get a stop. And I give Wisconsin a lot of credit. Jordan Davis makes his first 3 of the season at a huge moment to tie it up. I mean, you just cannot draw this stuff up. Tyler Wall's not a great 3-point shooter. I think he sank 1. Just a weird game. You have the Crowell kid inside making well, maybe it wasn't as drastic of a hook as it looked from my seat, but this unbelievable hook shot with the clock expiring on one possession. Things just could not go Iowa's way on that end in the overtime, and eventually it came back to bite them. But proud of the fight because this game probably should have been over in regulation, and Iowa found a way to get it close. So Speaking of close, no pun intended, let's welcome our coach, Coach Gary Close. Gary, can you hear me, first of all?
I sure can.
Well, Gary, first of all, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're traveling at the moment, and you were at the game, so you have a perspective that many of our listeners do not. And at the outset of my little dialogue, I just said, proud of the fight of this team. The game probably should have been over. You're down 8 with about a minute and a half to go. It looked all but over at that point. Iowa comes up with a big steal. Tony Perkins and Patrick McCaffrey, those guys stepping up on the final couple sequences of regulation. Just talk, first of all, about the positives. Patrick McCaffrey and Tony Perkins stepping up when it counted.
Yeah, it was a terrific last 2 minutes. They just, there's just no quit, and made some unbelievable plays when it didn't look like they had any kind of a chance to pull it out, and sent into overtime, and really controlled overtime for most of it until the very end when the ball just did not bounce their way. I mean, I remember a tip by Brasha that went out, and then a play down at the Wisconsin end where the guy lost control of the ball and it bounced right to a teammate, and he knocked it in at the shot clock buzzer. And but boy, you got to tip your hat off to the effort. And we've talked all week about what a tough week it was with travel and the quality of opponent. It really would have been great to get this one, because that would have capped off a phenomenal week, especially down 2 starters. So, but showed a lot of character, and now they just got to get healthy. I mean, that's the bottom line. Their margin there is not that great anyway. To have 2 starters out, including the best players, a lot to overcome against a solid Wisconsin team.
Absolutely, and the loss of Aaron Eulis was significant. Obviously, I don't want to maybe read too far into how Fran views his rotation, but we've talked about the lack of depth, especially at the 5. And I don't know if this is just a matchup thing, but we saw Carter Kingsbury in there well before either of the 2 7-footers. Was that, do you think, more a result of matchups, Gary, or just a result of Carter being more deserving?
Yeah, I guess. You're not there during practice. I think with Eulis out, I think it was more Eulis being out where they had to get Kingsbury in. They need another guard. So I'm guessing that's where that was. And I think he probably just felt that, Braccia was going to play as many minutes as he could handle. And the few minutes he didn't play, they were just going to go small with their wings. And that was a better lineup than either of the 2 big guys, which I agree with. I think that was the way to go.
Gary, in that overtime, I mean, I know I'm beating a dead horse because I said it again at the outset. It's just amazing to me, and you coach for both of these programs, but it's just amazing to me how this game was played in the first 40 minutes. And we can talk about officiating. I honestly didn't think the officials were all that bad. I'm probably in the minority on this. I certainly would be in the minority if I was talking to the Iowa coaching staff, specifically Fran. But it just seemed like the first 40 minutes, you're just playing Wisconsin's brand of basketball. Everything's hard to come by. It's obviously a physical game. Just points are hard to come by. And then you get to overtime. What switched in overtime where both teams were just going back and forth, back and forth?
Yeah, that's a real good question. I'm not exactly sure, to tell you the truth. I did think that Iowa did a little better job of getting down. When you play Wisconsin, and you got to bring the ball down with some kind of pace. If you just walk it up and let them get their defense set, they're really, really good. And I thought, some teams are reluctant to shoot early in the shot clock, but it's probably going to be the best shot you're going to get rather than trying to create one as the shot clock's winding down. So I thought Iowa did a good job of getting some pretty good looks in overtime with some pace. And the guys shot the ball with some confidence. They got some things going towards the basket, and but they couldn't get enough stops on the other end to get out to a little bit of a lead and put a little more pressure on them. And Wisconsin hit a couple of threes from guys that don't normally make a lot of threes, and they didn't shoot threes very well all night, but they made some timely ones, and that was basically the difference.
I mentioned it before too, but Jordan Davis hadn't made a 3 all year, Gary, and he just cans a big one. at a big time. You have a tough shot by
Yep.
Crowell, who didn't do much tonight.
Yep.
Just hard things that are kind of hard to explain.
Yeah, it was just that's the way they played so far. They have won all those games with the exception of one that are very tight. I mean, they could easily have 3, 4, 5 more losses, but they have found a way to get enough points to win close games. And if they continue to do that, they'll be in the race. It was they have found a way to win games that have been close, and they deserve some credit for that. They certainly got some great bounces tonight.
Let's talk briefly about Tony. We mentioned Tony Perkins, but Philip Herbracha with 10 points, 8 boards, 4 assists. I mean, obviously he's not going to give you 22 and 11 every night, Gary, but it did seem like Wisconsin figured out a way to somewhat neutralize Philip Herbracha. But, Connor McCaffrey was spectacular with 17, 10, and 5. Just provide your thoughts on both of those guys.
Well, Wisconsin does well that a lot of teams don't do and probably don't even know to do it, is they make post players shoot over them rather than allowing them to get angles towards the basket. If you can get an angle on the post defender, you got a much better chance of making a basket than trying to shoot over them, especially when they're 7 feet tall. So Philip had some tough shots over people that weren't successful. When he did get some angles from time to time, then he was fairly effective. But Crowell is a tough player to shoot over, as is Wall, and they play good position defense. They don't leave their feet. They make you shoot tough 4 or 5 footers over some length and don't foul. And that's not an easy shot. They did a pretty good job of that. And I think that's how, in previous games, Philip's been able to get angles or shoot over smaller people. And Wisconsin's always done a good job of trying not to give up angles around the basket, and for the most part, they did that tonight.
I'm going to say one more thing, Gary, to you, and then if there's anything else you want to add before we let you slide here, I want to bring this up, and I know it's going to sound like I'm again beating a dead horse on something, and you may not agree with it, Gary. First of all, the crowd was phenomenal, especially late in the game. In overtime, they were incredibly engaged and loud. I understand that we're approaching finals week. I'm disappointed by the fact that, a game like this, you end up with a little over 12,000. And I'm looking at the official box score here, 12,000 people in attendance on a Sunday afternoon, coming off a throttling of Iowa State. I'm disappointed by that, Gary. I'm not trying to call out anybody specific, but I just don't know what else you can do to get people in seats. Sunday afternoon, Gary.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things, and it probably sounds like excuses, but you just got done the Iowa State game, like you said, final start tomorrow, so the student section was not as strong. Wisconsin is not a glamorous team like an in-state rivalry. If that had been Michigan or Purdue or somebody like that, the crowd probably would have been bigger. But I think it was a combination of a short turnaround from the Iowa State game and finals week coming up and a Sunday night NFL football. All those things probably factored into it. But like you said, I thought the crowd was really good at the end and had a role in making that dramatic comeback.
What did you think of the last thing I'll ask you, Gary? What did you think of Iowa defensively through the first 40? I thought they were pretty good overall.
I thought they were too. I think the big thing they've got the big difference is they just give up too many layups, too many shots around the basket. I think I had Iowa for 8 layups in the first half, and they had 22 points in the paint in the first half. And we're not shooting very well from 3. They're just they're giving up a little bit too much dribble penetration. They're just not getting bodies, over to keep people from getting to the rim. I like to go back and count it, but I'll bet you Wisconsin had 10, 12 layups. And if you give up that many layups, it's going to make your job winning a lot more difficult. But the effort was there. Their defense was great down the stretch when they made their run. But they've got to shore up their ability to contain the ball and not let people get to the rim.
And am I right in saying I don't think the officials were as bad as maybe some people thought?
I didn't think so. I mean, I don't think they had a effect on the outcome. And that's what you want. I thought for the most part it was a solid officiating game.
Fran McCaffrey.
You have to go back and look at the tape. A lot of times when you look at the tape, you might think a little different, but usually when I've done that in the past, the officials have been pretty accurate.
Fran was close tonight, Gary. It was.
What's that?
I say Fran was close on getting tossed tonight.
Yeah, that was a very difficult technical foul. He was on the edge for quite a while, and fortunately got just a little bit over it, and that was all it took to get a tough tee at that time when the game was in doubt.
Well, Gary, again, appreciate you taking the time on the road this evening to give us a call, and a tough loss. But again, long season. It's something I was listening to Gary Dolphin and Bobby on the way here. I'm in Cedar Rapids at the moment, but listening to them on the way here, and they both brought up, it's a long season. You got a 20-game conference season. I think these two teams look like two tournament teams, Gary. And you're going to have an opportunity now to get healthy, as you said. And then even once you get back on the court next Saturday, you've got kind of I won't say a gimme, but you got Southeast Missouri State. You've got Eastern Illinois, who's terrible, a chance to get healthy, and hopefully you come back against Nebraska full strength.
Yep. That's the key. They've got to get healthy, get through finals. And once they do that, we got a lot of basketball left to be played.
Appreciate it, Gary. We'll talk to you next Saturday.
You bet. All right, Corey. Look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Appreciate Coach Close, as always, for being with us and making sure he provided his 2 cents because, he very easily could have opted out this evening. So thank you to Gary. We've got people waiting on hold. I know behind in the chat, lots going on this evening, folks. This is and again, I'm living in the moment a bit, and so forgive me for doing this. This is as difficult of a loss for me watching Iowa basketball since probably Richmond. I'm just trying to think. They haven't lost. They've only lost. They lost to TCU. They lost to Duke. So I guess that's not a huge statement, but tough loss this evening. Let's get to Doug, who's been waiting patiently. Doug, welcome, sir.
Hey, welcome. It's 1-2. We won one game out of 3, which won 2-1 record. But Coach, last year I asked Coach about that pack line defense that Wisconsin runs, and it's just hard to go against. I think we found our new Brad Davidson, though. It's definitely Tyler Wall. I do not like that guy.
Why?
He was waving at the end of the game. He just seemed like he had that attitude that Brad did last year, and you
know why that is, though. We can blame the apples all we want, but the person who is behind all that, his initials are GG. That's just a fact. If you don't like Brad Davison and you didn't, I didn't like, who was the other kid, and Pretzel, or Brevin Pretzel, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Pretzel, whatever.
They've had him for years.
Yeah. So that's it. You know what? I know Bo Ryan was cut from a certain cloth. Gary Close was a part of that staff. I think Greg Gard is cut from a different cloth, and I've never been a big fan of Greg Gard. I think that's what you're seeing. If you don't, I didn't, by the way, I got out of there. I didn't look to see the players waving. That's why I heard somebody else said that. Who were they waving at? Were they waving at the Wisconsin?
Yeah, I don't know. They were waving at the student section, I think. I don't know. He just was kissing and waving like George Nang did.
That's the thing is, at this, who cares? I don't know. I'm not saying anything about ZJ's comment or your comment, Doug, but to me, George Niang did it. You got Jordan Bohannon signing his shoes and blowing a kid. Who cares? It's just.
Yeah, I don't know these guys personally.
If you're doing it to the student section, the student section is hounding. It wasn't a very again, it wasn't a very impressive student section, but the student section's hounding the Wisconsin all game. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, just move on. They lost, Wisconsin won. You have bragging rights until next time.
Well, I want to say this. I like Connor and everything he does, but you were talking about our depth. It's not just our depth at the 5; it's our depth at the 4. Connor, I know 2 years ago was playing the 4, but then he would get relieved by Jack Nungy and Keegan, and we weren't that small. So even though we started the 4 guards 2 years ago, we weren't small because we had Keegan and we had Keegan and Jack Nungy in there. So we were able to start those. I mean, Connor should only probably be our 4 for a short period of time.
Doug, Connor and Patrick might have been the 2 best guys on the floor for Iowa tonight.
Yeah, and I agree. I just like having Chris guard Tyler Waller would have been a lot better than having Connor do it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I just it just was. Connor does his best. He's very physical. He probably is only 6'5", 6'6". He had 10 rebounds. He had a great game. The McCaffrey's. We just need another frontline player.
Tyler Wall is the real deal. I mean, he is a really good basketball player. So that's a tough matchup for Connor. I mean, I thought Connor held his. I mean, how many? Yeah. Let me pull up Tyler Wall's stats.
I'm not saying that's the reason why we lost. I'm just saying Chris, I think, could do better on him.
Well, Tyler Wall ended up, 21 and 7, 9 of 14. Yeah, I mean, you want Chris in for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And let's be honest. I'm not. I understand Fran's thought process in the second half, and there was criticism, and I was hearing it all around me. Criticism over the fact that Fran stuck with, and he didn't stick with that lineup for a real long time. But boy, it didn't take long for Wisconsin to cut into what was a 6 or 8 point lead.
Yeah.
And take the lead. And it was, you had Dix out there, you had Kingsbury, you had Sanford. I want to say, who were the other 2? Connor and was it Rebracha?
That was one of the lineups.
That lineup is going to be criticized because you got a true freshman in Josh Dix who hasn't proven much. You've got Carver Kingsbury who's a walk-on. But again, you don't have. You're so thin with Ulis out and with Chris out, and you don't have confidence in the 2 bigs right now to give you anything. Apparently, I know Josh has spotted them here and there, but and that lead just dissipated quickly in that second half.
And you're probably right. There probably wasn't anyone to guard Tyler Wall any better than Connor did. And Connor.
Who would you put on there? Who would you put on
Chris?
The wall? No, I'm saying with who they had healthy this evening.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Connor's pretty much the only person. I mean, Patrick isn't as physical as Connor, so you can't do that. Rebracha, but you have to guard the Kroll. Is that the other big guy? But I mean, yeah. So I mean, they were playing both Kroll and Tyler quite a bit. So I think you have, you automatically have to put Connor on one of the 2 big men. So, it'd be nice. Hopefully next year we get some more depth in the front court and develop some players. And no, I'm not by any means saying that we played very hard today. It would just been nice to have Chris back. It was a tough loss. Like I said, I got most of my cussing out before going. I haven't said anything derogatory since getting on with you, so I'm happy.
Well, here's the deal, Doug, and I kind of said this earlier. Being at the game, you've got, start of the game was all Wisconsin, right? Then it flips. Iowa gets momentum. It looked like, late in that second half, they had all the momentum. Wisconsin comes back, takes momentum, and then Iowa kind of takes it back heading into halftime. I think we were tied at 27 at halftime.
27. Yep.
And then second half, just back and forth. And it did feel like it was over. When you're up 8, when you're down 8 with a minute to go, less than a minute, actually. I think I just read 54 seconds to go. It was an 8-point game. They come back. And then in overtime, you feel like, as an Iowa fan, you feel like we're going to win this game. We got all the momentum right now. We're scoring at will. Yeah, so it's one of those games that I understand a lot of people upset in the chat because it is just an exhausting game. I also think it was a real high-quality game as the game went on. I just thought it was a really good college basketball game.
Another thing, we talk about the refs too. if they would have gave Fran that second technical, we wouldn't have had any chance. So they held back, and he was staring them down hardcore according to the TV. So,
Well, so Doug, you weren't at the game?
No.
Okay. So it looked to me, it appeared, and I got to figure out who the other official was, because you had Bill Eck, you had Larry Scarato. Let me find out who the other.
And Larry Serrato's the guy he's had trouble with in the past, right? I don't know if he's had trouble with all of them.
Problems with all of them.
Okay.
But no, the reason I bring that up is because let me find it here. He was staring. He was staring one of these guys down. Let me find who the officials were tonight. I can never.
Yeah, you got the first two right because I looked into it because that Larry Serrato. Yeah, I remember him having an issue with him. And I tried looking up the other guy. I was like, Bill something.
Brooks Wells. He's the other guy, Brooks Wells. And it appeared to me, from my vantage point, and we had a pretty good vantage point, it appeared to me as though Brooks Wells, after the technical, Brooks Wells didn't give him the technical, by the way. I think it was Bill Eck that gave him the T, I think. Mm-hmm. Brooks Wells was staring Fran down from across the court. And I don't know if they showed this on the TV broadcast, but Fran was having to be held back by 2-3 guys, coaches.
Yeah, I saw the strength and conditioning coach out there. I go, then you're starting to get down to the numbers.
Fran had that look in his eye like I haven't seen in a while. And it was, you know what the look was? I'll tell you what the look was, Doug. It was the look of, man, this anger management is testing me right now. Like it did. It looked like a guy who'd been, I'm not saying he's actually been through anger management, but it looked like a guy who was using every aspect of his soul not to just completely lose his mind.
Yeah.
With that being said, I understand there were some bad calls. There were some missed travels. And I understand there were some complaints. I'm not debating it. I don't think it was all that bad. Collectively, I've seen worse, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not fair for me to judge because I'm always going to have my Hawkeye goggles on. So, you're right. I like I said, it was just a tough game to lose. And they played really hard. And we need to get Chris healthy, hopefully before Nebraska or Penn State. I don't know. Do you have any idea when Chris could be back? It's like
I'm guessing they'd like to have all these guys, both of these guys, back by Nebraska. Okay. I mean, that's 2 weeks? Nebraska, is that 2 weeks from today?
I think so. It's a road game. I know the 21st is when Eastern Illinois is because I am thinking about going to that game because it's already don't be bad when there's no students. So
yeah, good point. Yeah, no, that'd be great. They play Nebraska on the 29th, so that's over 2 weeks away.
Yeah, and those road games, those are very important because those are winnable road games. You need to get.
Well, I don't get one back, Doug, because they dropped the home game. This loss stunk for a variety of reasons. One of which being they lost at home in the conference. That's just a tough one.
Yeah, and it just was. And thank you for sharing some of your feelings about a great guard. Again, I try not to dislike anyone, but like I said, and I wasn't trying to be mean to Tyler. But you're right. Just Wisconsin irritates me. I don't know. Just like I said, and Iowa State irritates me. But I'm from here, so. I've always figured that was the reason why I got irritated by Iowa State. Now I can kind of understand why I get irritated by Wisconsin a little bit. Yeah. And like I told you, I've always liked Coach, so I always tried to be reasonable whenever we played them in the mid-2000s. So,
and I didn't care for Bo Ryan either, but I think, again, guard is a different cat. So,
yeah.
Anyways, Doug, I appreciate your call as always, sir.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, moving right along here. Kevin, this is an interesting point. So I had somebody else complain about Tony Perkins. Ulis is out. And with Ulis out, who else is handling the ball besides DeSante Bowen, a true freshman, who, by the way, started and got a lot of minutes. So Perkins, he's not been playing point very long. I mean, he's been a starting point guard in this conference for 1 month. And this is his first game as Iowa's starting point guard. So, there were moments tonight where, there was some frustration, but Tony Perkins also made some big plays, including that steal that set up the Patrick McCaffrey 3 that sent this game to the extra period. Let's get Clay into the show. Clay,
Corey, how you doing?
Man of the hour, who walked up to me and introduced himself at the game. I appreciate that, Clay.
I had to run this guy down. He was walking away from me. I kept saying, Corey, Corey, Corey.
I hear voices in my head. I've been told I hear voices in my head, so I can't listen to all of them, Clay.
It felt like you were running away from me. Maybe you did hear me. You were just like, oh, God, there's somebody following me. Get me away.
I do appreciate when people come up like yourself. And you were sporting the merch. Do you still have the sweatshirt?
I do still have the merch on, yeah.
Yeah, see, there you go. What's the upside?
Yeah.
How do you like the sweatshirt, Clay?
It feels really nice. I wish the what's the upside was a little bit bigger. It doesn't. Okay. The letters, the font's not very big. Can't see it very far away, but I mean,
okay,
it's nice. Yeah.
No, I appreciate the suggestion. And what did you think? I mean, you were obviously at the game. Was it as hard for you to swallow as for me?
I didn't have any problems with the refereeing at all. I was unfortunately in the restroom when that call got. I think it was TP that got called, the one that upset Fran. I didn't see it, so
could be. I honestly I don't remember what upset Fran. I don't even remember what upset him. And in his building, he was upset about stuff. And it's interesting too. This is what people, again, you're watching on TV, you don't see. Fran was upset at the officials, got the T in the second half, but throughout that game, specifically the second half, there were a couple timeouts where he was ripping into his guys. It wasn't just the officiating. I think he was just frustrated with his guys. Boy, the offense was stagnant early, and Fran talked about that during his post-game interview with Bobby Hansen. There were times when it seemed like they executed really well on that end, and the times where Wisconsin, they just played right into Wisconsin's hands. Wisconsin just keeps you out of the lane. I mean, they just keep everything outside. Iowa took so many threes in the first few minutes of this game, and that kind of gets overlooked because it was the beginning of the game. But I think Fran was frustrated with a lot of different things and ended up taking it out on the officials.
Other than Patrick McCaffrey, we have, especially with Keegan and Aaron being out, we have nobody that really drives and breaks down defenders and gets in the lane. I mean, Tony Perkins does at times, but we're really hurting as far as guards that can get into the paint and make a play.
Well, and it would have been nice. I mean, Desante Bowen's really young. He's going to be that guy. I have confidence he'll be that guy. He didn't play great tonight, but I mean, you go from he played how many, 3 minutes the other night against Iowa State to starting tonight, all because of one injury. You give him time, but you're right. They need Ulis. Even though Ulis turned the ball over a lot against Iowa State, they need somebody who can break down, and that hurt when you're playing that Wisconsin front. And they just, again, they just block off every open lane to the basket. And that's what Iowa need to do. You just need to penetrate and create that way. But you're not able to do that when you don't have guys who can break down the opponent. So you're right. Tony Perkins is a guy who can do that, but without Ulis and Bowen's just not experienced enough at this level to count on him, rely on him in these situations, it makes it tough.
Yeah, I think Bowen's going to go to sleep tonight and a little upset with his performance would be my guess. But
yeah, you're right. And Fran talked about that after the game as well. Just guys are beating themselves up. I'm sure Patrick is kicking himself for that last three, which, boy, that looked like it was going down.
He did. Rimmed in and out, yeah.
Just had he made that and we go to double OT, who knows? I don't know what happens at double OT, but wild.
Yeah, they had a couple guys with 4, I think. So, maybe.
Yeah.
Would you have liked to seen Dix in the second half more? Or is it Dix or Nix?
Dix. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that lineup just didn't work. And I think Fran just kind of, I don't want to say abandoned those guys, but
we saw Kingsbury in the second half, so I don't think we saw Dix much
so
at
Dix
all.
played in that second half because he was part of that lineup with Kingsbury. But those guys just weren't very effective in the second half. And, they kind of spelled the starters some minutes there in the first half, and it worked out okay. And Fran turned back to him. Again, you're talking about a couple guys who can shoot threes, and I think that's also what Fran's thinking. Hey, we need some guys who can shoot a couple, but they got to get Dix some shots. If Dix is going to play, he's going to be able to shoot threes. I mean, they even got Kingsbury a shot in that first half, and he made it from 3. They got to, if Josh Dix is going to be in the game, they got to figure out a way to get him open from 3. But again, Wisconsin, excellent defensive team. I don't know where they rank in KenPom, but traditionally they just make it so hard to get the ball inside.
Unfortunately, my buddy has to take all the credit for that loss. Tony Perkins was going to the free throw line, right? It's a tie ball game. And he leans over and says to me, Tony Perkins never misses clutch free throws. He's going to make both of these. Guess what Tony Perkins does? He makes one or two. Yep.
That is the way it works.
I was thinking that exact same thing, too, when he stepped up to the line. I was like, Tony's going to make both of these. and he just
I will
jinxed
give
them.
Iowa credit here. I thought they shot their free throws relatively well. Let's see, 14-17. You can't really complain about that. That was a big miss,
No.
but boy, 14-17 on the night, you can't really complain. Wisconsin on the flip side, 6 of 11 and 6 of 22 from three.
What are you giving Fran as a letter grade for the last couple of years? I've been thinking about that recently. And
Last couple of years?
last 2-3 years, what are you giving, like on a school like letter grade? What are you giving him?
Boy, that's hard to group all these, these teams have been so different with Garza and with Keegan, and now, this team. Collectively, I'd say a B.
B, it's it, really?
Would you said higher?
I would have said higher. I was going to give him a B+. I might even have given him an A-. But
well, I'm not saying you're wrong. I know there's a lot of people that put a lot of emphasis on March success, and besides the Big Ten tournament last year, they haven't. And a lot of people don't even care about the conference tournament. They haven't done anything in March. Not the Big Ten tournament. We're notwithstanding, but March Madness, NCAA.
He has had arguably the best player in the nation 3 years running.
And that's why there's no way anybody who wants to argue that he, should get a C or a D. I mean, that's nonsense. Given the fact, given the level of development, and Chris has had his moments this year. We're still early, and Chris is hurt right now. Chris has got an opportunity to be an NBA player in a year. I don't know that he's there yet, but you're absolutely right. Fran, here's big thing with Fran. I think there is a divide between the fans and Fran, and it all is. I don't think it has anything to do with Fran's personality. People used to argue that Fran kind of gets under the skin of his fans because he's not the most huggable and lovable. It just comes down to March, and they got to get out of that first weekend. And I was sitting watching that game tonight, Clay. I'm thinking to myself, this feels like an NCAA tournament game. I mean, it just did. I just felt like maybe a 8 versus 9 game, 7 versus 10 game in the NCAA tournament. I think that's probably where these teams end up. I think they're both tournament teams, and Fran's got to get out of that first weekend. But good things to take away from tonight, and like Coach Close said, got to get healthy.
Yeah. Oh, Corey had a pretty good view tonight. I was like 5 or 6 rows behind him, but Corey was sitting courtside.
You weren't far behind me. You were
no, not at all. I saw you, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Corey. I mean, I've never seen you in person before, but I'm pretty sure that's Corey, and I knew you'd said you were coming to the game tonight. It's like, yeah, I think that's Corey.
Enjoyed our seats tonight, and just wish, everything about it. Carver's great when it's rocking, even when it's not full. I mean, we were 2,500 short of being capacity or even closer to 3. Still a great play. I mean, it was a lot. Would you say it was I thought it was a tremendous crowd in overtime.
From my seats, there was a lot of people already filing out when we were down 8 at the end of the game. But maybe they stayed around the rafters on the edge and watched. But yeah, no, it was a good crowd in overtime. I don't know who the Wisconsin team was waving to because there wasn't any student section there to begin with. What was there, 100 students there? Maybe.
It was not good.
Yeah. Other than that, the student section. I don't want to call the student section out. Obviously, it's finals week, but.
No, it's not finals week. Tomorrow's finals week.
Tomorrow's finals week.
I know, and Coach Close is sticking up. I just get tired of that excuse. I mean, I just don't know. I understand there are ways you could probably help the situation. I've talked to Fran about that. Can you redistribute where the students are at? I think that's probably something that will happen eventually. But, I mean, you just can't get fans to show up. I mean, basically, this is what happens. Every year, Iowa struggles to get butts in seats in November and December. And I hear the same excuse every year. Well, people are in football mode until the end of November. Okay, we're done with football. Well, it's finals week, and people are gone for the holidays, and, gas prices are high, and, the weather is iffy. And, I mean, all these things, those excuses don't seem to fly at other places.
No.
So get to the games. That's all I have to say. I mean, you can't make people do these things, but I don't understand how there's not support. This is a fun team to watch. I understand they lost tonight. There's a lot of fight in this team. You get Chris, you get Aaron back. This team's got potential to be a really good team that can make it to the second weekend. I'm not saying they will, but there is the potential there. Just like there was a potential last year, and they fell short. But I just hope for the sake of these players, I'm not able to go to most games. I mean, I live 2 hours away. I understand there's some people that live 2, 3, 4 hours away. I get that. But there's plenty of people that live. I don't want anybody to try to tell me otherwise. There's plenty of people that live within an hour radius or less of Carver that are choosing to stay home for reasons not mentioned earlier. And that's their right, but I'm encouraging all those people to consider supporting Iowa in person.
Totally agree. If you're giving those courtside tickets away at any point this season, I'll gladly take them. Are you a season ticket holder?
Believe me, they're not mine.
Oh,
That's all I'll say, Clay. Believe me, they're not mine.
All right, I'll leave you with one thing. I'm going to ask a question, then I'll get off. Over-under is set at 31.5 for the bowl game. What are your thoughts? Over or under? I'm going to put my life savings on whatever you say.
Well, I'll have to end the stream early then. No, I again never would bet on a game, but if you had to ask me, I would say I'd take the over, just because of
the over.
Just because
2 third-string quarterbacks playing, you're taking.
I know, but 31. I mean, that's just such a ridiculous number.
That's saying that each team's going to get 3 touchdowns, though, right? Or one team's going to get 3, the other team's going to get 2. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. I would probably take the over, but would not be surprised if it's 9-6.
All right. Appreciate having me. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, Clay. Appreciate the time and the support. Tony the Tiger. How you doing, sir?
I'm actually really good. Really good. You know,
Okay.
All things considered.
No,
you know me.
Really good. You can't be really good after that ending.
I've got my typed out notes. Sorry.
Okay.
If you think I go long, do the
no. First of all, before we
off.
get to your typed out notes, I'm fine with talking about that. Can we first acknowledge that this game stunk? It was a quality game, but when you lose like that, it stinks.
Yeah. Yes. I'll agree. It stinks, but both teams are trying to win.
Now, do you agree with Spencer here, who says Fran is too old of a coach to be getting a tech that late in a close game? I'm all for him standing up for his players, but you have to know the situation. Points were hard to come by. Can't give them any. I understand that point of view, and I didn't press Coach close on that. I don't know how he'd respond to a question about Fran's technical foul, but I did, I was sitting there thinking, years ago I might have been saying, get a second one. It wouldn't have done him any good. And, it does hurt you. I mean, I do think it sparked a fire under some of his guys, but
yes, that 100%. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but 100% that's what I'm getting at is I think, and you could probably vouch for this more than I can because you had a lot better view than I did. And you saw the timeouts and all that stuff. I think he was trying to get a technical the whole game. Like, I've mentioned this to you before, like my past history of being an official, and certain coaches do try to get things to spark their players the whole game. I really think Fran was trying to get that the whole game, and it just happened at a horrible time. I don't mind his technical. I really don't. And I don't think we make it to overtime without it. I'll probably be on an island saying that. But I think some people rewatch the game, the 2 possessions right after the technical, there's very poor shot selection. And they jacked up threes. And if you look in the first overtime, we only played 1 overtime, but Connor and people drove to the basket to try to get fouls drawn. And I think that was working. And I think they just settled for the 3 ball those first 2 possessions after the 10.
I'll say this too. I don't think you're wrong on any of that. Chris, is it Bedachka? Fair point. I mean, it's more of an off-season topic, but just like we complain about Iowa not making staff changes in football. Well, nothing has been done about the student seating, and who does that fall on? I know there's more people involved than Gary Barta, but he's the AD. And then also Joseph, let me respond to this, Tony. Joseph says Sanford needs to quit shooting threes. Joseph, he and I have gotten into debates before and appreciate his support. I couldn't be more in disagreement with that comment because that's what he is, a three-point shooter. He's going through a very, very deep slump right now. But you got to work him out of that, and I don't think you work him out of it by telling him to stop shooting threes. If he's not shooting threes, he ain't playing. And I understand he's struggling right now. But you got to get it. You got to let him shoot out of it. And I know Coach Gatens was working with him pregame. They got a pretty good shooting coach in Coach Gatens. I don't know. I can't speak for Sherm or for Fran or Courtney, but this staff will get him out of that. And you just can't take away the kid's confidence completely. I know his confidence is probably already in a low place, but I just think you got to keep giving him shots.
I will respond to actually both that you were saying. Like, I think the first one was something about like the fans and Barta. I think I read somewhere, and I think it might have been on Tom Caker's message boards. When the Carver remodel happened, there was something in that gave the big donors the prime seats just for basketball. Correct. I don't know where I read that. Like, okay, so you verified that. Like, you saw the same thing.
Well, Fran McCaffrey spoke on that on this show.
Okay.
On this show, preseason, he talked about how there were certain people that donated a good amount of money and they were promised seats, but there are
just
ways
for basketball, right? And I think, am I wrong in this? Sorry to interrupt you. Am I wrong in this? That was just for men's basketball, not for wrestling and not for women's basketball, right?
Probably because those donors don't care about those two sports.
Yeah, but I'm just like,
say that.
Well, what I'm trying to get to is sometimes in wrestling, probably all the time in wrestling, the environment's better. I'm not a wrestling guy, but like you hear people say the environment.
I don't know about all the time. I think the big duels, sure, but I mean, I still think men's basketball gives you the best crowd. Fran did say that he expects that to change at some point.
And I get at the time in the '80s when he did it, you had to cater to the big donors. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just think at some point it's going to change, but it needs to change because the student issue, the attendance issues, specifically in November and December, and they don't go away in January, February. No. But there is more going for in-person attendance during those 2 months because there's less to do as it gets colder and colder. Students are back for the semester. I think it's easier to get fans and seats those 2 months, but I think November, December, especially some of these they had a great preseason schedule. I know some of the games were on the road. Seton Hall's on the road. Clemson, TCU's on a neutral site. But you get Iowa State at home. You get an early game against Wisconsin in conference play. I just think you got to do more to get fans and seats. And I beat that horse to death.
And anyone who complains about our non-conference schedule this year, I'm sorry, is uninformed and uneducated. Like, there's zero complaints about this non-conference schedule. And there should be.
You can't really schedule much of a better. Anybody who understands the process and understands you can't schedule much of a better lineup. Now, Georgia Tech didn't end up being very good, and that's not their fault because Iowa's not the ones that set the ACC Big Ten matchup. TCU is going to be a really good team. I think they already are. I know they had a bad loss early. They're fine. Clemson's better than people thought, and Seton Hall won again tonight. They won at Rutgers. Yeah. So, those are going to be games that help them on the schedule and all of a sudden, and they're still looking for a marquee win. But you're right. Non-conference schedule strong, and Iowa State's still strong.
I'll go down what I was saying. First of all, we need to subscribe, buy the merch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I want to start with. Like, support your show. I got the hat on. I still got my coffee cup, and I'll echo.
Hold on. Is there coffee in there, or is there booze?
Can I plead the fifth?
Sure. We'll allow that this time.
All right. I want to second what the earlier caller said about the font. Like, I do think it needs to be bigger on the merch. If you have any, I know you may not have control over it, but
I
love it. But I'm just giving you feedback.
All the font? Are you talking about on?
Well, I think this is kind of a little small. Like, this is on my hat. Like, he's saying from far away you can't see it, and this is the same thing on the cup. It's maybe a little small, but
so you want the logo because the logo has to be big. The whole logo would have to be
yes. Bigger. That's what I was trying to say. Is expand upon the logo.
I can definitely pass that along, and I think that's probably doable.
Second, and this is a positive for me. Have we mentioned Sherman Dillard's outfit? That was awesome.
What did he have
on? He had the white shirt and the gold, the bright. How could you not see that in your awesome seats? The gold pants.
I wasn't staring at Sherm.
He had bright gold pants and a white shirt, and that guy always was dressed to the nine, I think. But he's a fashion plater, however you want to say it. But it just looked good. He had the gold pants and the white shirt. We kind of mentioned the referees. One thing I wanted to say was, we were talking about Brooke Wells because he was the one who gave the technical.
Brooks.
I'm sorry, Brooks. Now I'm even looking at it because I have the Ken Palm stuff pulled up. Now I'm going to go over Brooks' schedule. Brooks has worked nonstop from Tuesday, December 6th. He was at Manhattan, Kansas, West Lafayette, Indiana, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Cedar Falls, Iowa, Springfield, Missouri, and then Iowa City tonight. He has not had a rest since we played at Madison Square.
And he was sweating like a pig.
I could imagine that. Like, look how many games he worked in a row and didn't have a break.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't know what his reputation is in the conference, but Fran has had his run-ins with Brooks Wells.
It looks like he's a Big Ten and Missouri Valley official, just from looking at. Like, he was a regular Big Ten official. He had our Iowa-Nebraska game last year. I hate to bring it up, but like I was going to compare this to the Rutgers game last year. Remember that? Where he lost at Rutgers. It was like 48-46, and we lost that phantom. I'll say it was a phantom foul call. Could have won.
Oh, that was a terrible call. That was, I believe that was Courtney Green, correct?
Brooks Wells was on that same crew.
Yeah, but it was Courtney Green that made the call.
It was Courtney Green who made the call, but I was just looking. I'm using Ken Palm. Like, I was looking at his game history of last year, and he was on the same crew. Now, whatever you want to say. What was, you were talking earlier with that caller? The same caller had the "What's the Upside" shirt. You heard rumblings the second half around the lineup it was all small ball. Rebraca was not in there. I remember like the caller mentioned that. Rebraca was not in that lineup. Rebraca was sitting at the table because that was before the under-8 timeout. Rebraca and Patrick were sitting at the table, and we were going with Connor, Sanford, Dix, Kingsbury, and I think it was Perkins. Our 5 was Connor at that point. And they just exploited that. There was no Rebraca or Patrick at the.
If I'm recalling correctly, that lineup did okay in the first half. I think it was the same lineup in the first half.
So, it did in the first half, but then the second half, Wisconsin made a coaching choice.
The problem is, and I know we can be critical of Fran for playing that lineup, but when it works in the first half, you have reason. This is common sense, right? You have reason to go back to that lineup in the second half. And by the time he got a chance to do something about it, Wisconsin had caught up. So you don't know it doesn't work until it doesn't work. Now, there's a difference between letting a team go on an 8-0 run and a 20-0 run. They didn't go on a 20-0 run. They went like an 8-0 run. But, it is that, it's one of those calls that didn't work in hindsight. But again, you got to get these guys a breather. And obviously, Fran was more comfortable going with a guard-heavy lineup than he was throwing a guy like Riley or Josh Ogundele out there. And I don't blame him for that because, again, those guys have not taken the jump you want them to take. Listen, we can talk matchups all we want. If Josh Ogundele, I'm going to call him out specifically. I mean, I'm not ripping him, but this is the reality. If he were where they wanted him to be, he'd be playing every night, regardless of who they're playing. He'd be playing. Were there ever games, and I hate to do this, but there were ever games, Tony, where Luka Garza just didn't play? Well, we got to go small ball. We're not going to play Luka. Of course not. But Josh is not there. And I'm not saying it's all his fault, but he's not there. And I don't know how else to say it. It's just that it's a chain effect, right? It's a snowball effect, I should say. When you have one or two guys out and you have a couple guys who aren't developed, boy, now you're talking about playing walk-ons. And fans ought to be, Carter Kingsbury made a big 3 in that first half. Give the kid credit. He stepped in, had never played, is playing in a Big Ten game. Give the kid credit because he made a big 3. But, and I don't think he did anything in that second half that stood out to me as, wow, that was horrendous. But he's not the athlete that a lot of these guys are. And in hindsight, Fran would probably say, put him and Josh Dix out there on the floor at the same time without Phillip. That's a tough one. But again, if it works in the first half, you assume maybe it works in the second. That's all. The only way I can explain it.
So, I'll add on to what you're saying. What is the story with Josh Ogundele? Why did this seemed like a game where there are certain points we could have put him in. He played I'm looking at the box score. He played 0 minutes, right? 0 minutes,
Yeah,
0 seconds.
He didn't go in the game.
Yeah,
matchups, I guess. But again, that's my point. It's not. He is going to play based on matchups, and he's not. He's going to not play based on matchups. That's what's unfortunate. He's not. It doesn't appear that he has earned his right to minutes, and that's just unfortunate. I don't see how he sticks around in this program another year because he's just. I love the kid. I want to see him succeed, but he's using a scholarship right now, and you're not even playing the kid. I think he's healthy, and he's not playing. So
that makes sense. Like the matchups did not dictate it, but I just was like, well, why didn't we try to see him? But Fran was going more small ball.
My easy way to explain it: when you're not good enough to be an every night guy, matchups will determine whether you play or not.
I just got 2 more quick things. Number 1, I want to say I think the record's not going to dictate it, but I still think we went 1-1-1 in this 3-game stretch.
Now, you cut out there at the end. Say
sorry,
again.
I think we went 1-1-1 in this 3-game stretch. I know the record's going to say 1-2. Okay, but I think we learned on how to play a team that's a physical defense. In your face type team like Wisconsin and Iowa State are. Now look back when we played those teams in the non-conference earlier with TCU, Duke, and Clemson. I think we performed better against that style of play as the season progressed. I mean,
yes.
Blew out Iowa State, however you want to say it.
Agreed.
I think there was no reason that we had any business being in this game, if I want to be honest. Just because of the rest we had versus the rest Wisconsin had. Like they didn't play since Tuesday. We had the tough Iowa State game, and they actually played earlier than we did Tuesday.
Yeah, they basically didn't. They basically Iowa just played an extra game in between because they both played. They both played Tuesday. Iowa had to play Thursday, and then they both play Sunday. So you're right, a lot of basketball, and then we're talking about overtime. Iowa's not only playing 3 games in 6 days, you're also talking about having to play in overtime. So, no, that is a valid point. And you traveled back from New York. There's a lot going on.
Wisconsin had a home game. They had a home game that same night. I mean, let's be honest, the Wisconsin to Iowa City trip, you could say it's a home game. It's still a road game. But, I mean, that's not a long trip.
Yeah.
It's not like they had to travel from Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, you're right.
So I just want to. I always try to be positive. You know that, and
I get you.
I want to say we're 1-1-1 here because I think we've learned a lot. We learned a lot from that TCU game and the Clemson game, and I think if we didn't have those games and Fran didn't challenge them, we might have got blown out tonight.
It will serve them well later on. That TCU loss will serve them well later on. You just wish you could find a way in a game like this where you're down to, like Gary Close said earlier, you're down 2 guys. You're right there. You're up 3 in overtime. Then you're up 3 in overtime. Then you're up 2 in overtime. You never figure out a way to close it out. That's what's frustrating. But, it's one game.
Wasn't there a point in overtime where they were up 3, had the ball after that jump ball, and they could have went up 5? They could have went up 5.
I don't know. The official box score from the NCAA was released, and overtime's not included in that box score for whatever reason. So I want to look back at the play-by-play. I'll go back and watch part of this game later, but you might be right. I don't remember if that happened.
It was like a jump ball.
But if that happened, Tony, that only happened once.
Yeah, it was a one-time. Yeah.
Iowa would score and get up by 2 or 3, and then Wisconsin would respond every single time.
No, there was one time. There was one time. I'm not saying it was multiple times. There was one time where it happened on the wing closest to the camera view where there was a jump ball or something happened. And then I remember we got the ball out of bounds and Connor inbounded it. And I was like, sweet. We're up 3. We've been playing great this overtime. We've been pounding the lane, realizing we could get to the foul line. And then we had those 2 back-to-back turnovers where it was Tony and I think Patrick were on the block, and they just got the ball swiped. Yeah. And if we could have turned something into that, you know, when we were up 3 and at least got to the foul line and done something.
Yeah. Woulda, shoulda, coulda, right?
Yeah, woulda, shoulda, coulda. The other thing I was going to close out with, number 1, Eastern Illinois is ranked ahead of Louisville.
What ranked ahead of Louisville in what?
The net rankings. Net.
We actually
NCAA
net rankings.
Yeah, they've had the net rankings for about a week. Iowa dropped like 8 spots today. They update them daily. They did it like I want to say it was like 4 or 5 days.
I didn't know we had the first net rankings. I didn't.
Yeah, we did. I'm sorry. I should have told you that in the last call.
No.
Yeah, like they're updating them daily. Like you could refresh them like 9 or 10 a.m. or whatever. They update them daily.
Are you on there at 8:59, just frantically hitting the refresh button, Tony?
You know, you don't have to out me for this.
I think it's hilarious, man.
No, like I love college basketball. You know that. And I am like our boy Cal is, you know, Cal. You know, it's 349. Eastern Illinois is 359, and Louisville is 360.
Yeah, Ari Gold brings up something quite interesting. If Louisville and Cal win their conference tournaments, how about
God? That'd be fun.
Obviously, they're not going to make the Final Four. But wouldn't that be hilarious? The teams
that would be fun.
Find a way into the tournament in March.
Well, did you know that Louisville played Florida State this week?
And did they play them close?
No.
Florida State's awful.
Florida State's awful, but
Florida State played Purdue close, though.
They did. Give me like 5 seconds to Google this.
Okay. While you're doing that, I want to get to this question from Steven. And yes, Christopher, offensive rebounds. That is one thing, though, collectively, Christopher, you got to be happy with Iowa during this game. I did not expect Iowa to out-rebound Wisconsin 42-33. That's a good sign. All right, that's a good sign without Chris Murray. Now, Steven says, what's wrong with Sanford? Again, slump. I don't know how else you describe it. I do think he shoots rather quickly, and I understand he's got a quick release, which is a good thing at this level, good thing at the NBA level, but sometimes I feel like he doesn't square up to the basket. I've said that before. But again, he'll get out of this. I have confidence he will get out of this, and he'll start making threes, and watch out when he does. Hawkeye Mommy. How about that name, Tony? Hawkeye Mommy. Anyone know if Iowa pulled Trayshawn Holden's offer due to grades? I don't know that Iowa ever offered Trayshawn Holden. There's no reason for us to think that he ever got offered by Iowa. I do know there was baggage. I know that it's out there that it was grades. I can't tell you that specifically. Oregon obviously had no problem with the baggage because they took him. He committed today. Ari Gold says, where will Iowa finish in the Big Ten? I think they'll finish top 7. I still think they'll beat their projection. I think they were projected like 7th in the Big Ten preseason. I think they'll beat that. And then Matt, which program do you have more confidence in over the next 5 years, football or basketball? I trust basketball more with our young talent coming, and the future just looks brighter. I trust Fran to do what's best for the program right now more than I trust Kirk Ferentz. Let me just leave it at that. All right. Struggles or not in March, they got problems they got to figure out in March. But until Kirk makes a staff change, one big staff change that I feel needs to be made, or something else major changes, I have more confidence in Fran at this point than I do Kirk in making. I think both these teams, both these programs, I mean, they both. Iowa football last year, Tony, was in the Big Ten championship game. We were one win against Nebraska away this year from being in the Big Ten championship game. Iowa basketball won the Big Ten tournament. So both these programs are in strong places. Neither coach is on the hot seat, but there are fair complaints towards both.
I'll just rapid fire throw off those Ken Palm picks, then let you go. Sorry for taking too much time. But Louisville played Florida State 75-53. Florida State won.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 2, I think this was mentioned earlier about Wisconsin's defense. They have them as 19 in Ken Palm before this game.
Okay.
Number 3, it's not looking good for our second favorite team, Cal. I don't know if they're going to win a game.
They got to win a game. They got to win a
game.
That's going to
It's
be
not.
weird, man. Is it possible not to win a game? Has that ever happened at any Power 5 school ever? That can't have happened. There's no way a Power 5 team has ever went a full season and never not won a game. That's just insane. Do they have any? They got to have a bye game left. Who's left?
I've got it pulled up. So I've got it pulled up right now. Their next game is Santa Clara away, and Santa Clara is 117 in Ken. And you obviously know Cal's below 117. Their next game after that is UT Arlington at home.
My guess is they'll beat UT Arlington.
Ken Palmas is a 5-point game right now. So it's not a gimme.
They'll beat Texas Arlington. I'll say that.
After that, the only sub 200 games they have are Oregon State. Because after the UT Arlington, it's straight into conference.
Yeah.
Then they do get Oregon twice, but the rest of the Pac-12 is top 100.
Okay.
I'm going to keep you honest on Cal Watch the rest of the year.
I appreciate that. I need to know what happens with Cal.
Appreciate your time, man. I look forward to Saturday, right? Is it Saturday we got the next game? Saturday or Sunday?
A week from Saturday. And of course, I'll be here with content, and appreciate you supporting the merch, and we'll keep trying to improve the brand. And
I did want to ask a quick yes or no. Whose seats were better, yours or Coach Close's?
Tonight?
Yes.
Mine.
Okay.
Tonight.
I didn't watch. Yeah. Okay. That's all I wanted to ask. Thanks for your time, Corey. I'll see you.
Thank you, Tony. All right. Well, appreciate everybody being here. Yes, turnovers, Lemansky. That's been weird these last couple of games. 18 turnovers against Iowa State in a win. Tonight they turned the ball over 15 times in a loss. And that's gotten a little concerning. But I do think Chris Murray has a bit of a calming effect. Does seem like obviously he's been out 2 games, and they've averaged, what would that be, like 16.5 turnovers per game in that 2-game stretch. So there is something to be said there. Lemansky, yes, thank you. Reminding everybody, please hit that like button, folks. If you're here, please do that. If you enjoy having this outlet and this content, please hit the like button. It does show, it's a way of showing appreciation, and certainly subscribe if you haven't already done that here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. CJ wants to know when my next Hawkeye huddle is for football. Well, CJ, I don't have anything called the Hawkeye huddle. I do have something. We do have a show called Hawkeye Hangout, if that's what you're talking about. Hawkeye Hangout is TBD. Let's just say that right now. We were on an every Wednesday schedule during football season. With football season done, of course, we're waiting the bowl game. We're going to kind of have it on a weekly basis. So we'll just see here. And we're not going to necessarily have a show every week, but to be determined. So stay tuned. Best way to know when I'm going live, the best way to know is by following me on Twitter. You can follow me at From the Hawkeye. If you don't have Twitter, then like the page, follow the page on Facebook, From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Turn notifications on. All right. And again, I post all scheduling, programming information on there. And please share the show out on social media. That does help as well. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody in the chat. Jim Bob, Hawkeye basketball is in for a long year. You're not a big threat if you're relying on the McCaffrey boys to carry the team. Jim, look, I hope you're a big Iowa fan. Patrick's line tonight, 24 points, 7 rebounds. Let me just pull it up, all right, so we can just spell this notion. Jim, Patrick McCaffrey, 24.7 boards, makes the game-tying 3 to send the game into overtime. Connor McCaffrey, another double-double, 17 points, 10 boards, 5 assists. Nepotism card ain't going to work tonight, folks. Not going to work here. You want to talk about nepotism? We'll have a football show to talk about that here pretty soon. Yes, Casey, Hawkeye Hangout. Stay tuned. Follow me on social media, and I'll certainly keep you posted. Thank you to the Johnny O Show for helping with the merch. Check out his stuff on YouTube. And yes, the merch is available from the Hawkeye of the Storm. See the description below under merch. Click on the description. Find that description. Find the link for merchandise selection. And hopefully Iowa gets Chris Murray and Aaron Eulis back next week. They need them back in the lineup, specifically Chris Murray. But again, Aaron Eulis, another ball handling point they certainly could have used this evening. Please shop Amazon with us. If you're doing shopping, any type of shopping on Amazon, find the link to Amazon in our description. Remember, when you buy through the link, you can buy anything, including Hawkeye merchandise. Hawkeye merchandise available on Amazon. Click the link in the description that says shop Amazon with us. And when you make purchases to your account, you're also supporting us when you use that link to purchase whatever you purchase on Amazon. Please become a premium subscriber. Consider this. Click the join button next to From the Hawkeye of the Storm. We've got some videos that drop early to our subscribers. We're going to have a discount here for merchandise coming up as well. Working on that at present. And if you're interested in sponsoring any of our coverage here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm, certainly reach out to me. Want to give a shout out to our guy, Brad Van Meter. I've talked about him at length on a number of occasions. 515-256-6480. Brad doing great work. His team down at State Farm in Des Moines. They are helping people get great rates on car insurance, boat insurance, renter's insurance, and the like. 515-256-6480 or online at bradvanmeter.com down at Fleur Drive in Des Moines. All right, let's catch up on the final aspect or final section of the chat. I did not mean to. I think I'm actually somewhat caught up here. James did bring this up. This is a good point. I observed the same thing during the game this evening, James. Chris Murray was on crutches. So that is somewhat concerning. All right. That is somewhat concerning. And, I don't know what to make of that. Is that purely a result of trying to stay off that foot? I'm guessing it is. But at the same time, you don't want to see your best player on crutches at any point. Somewhat of a concern. But again, might just be precautionary. He's in the boot still, so we'll see moving forward. CJ says, did you see that Terry Roberts, the chaos that Terry Roberts started, Justin Jacobs' dad saying that they transferred over what's going on behind closed doors? CJ, I did not see that. I saw Terry Roberts make a comment on Twitter. And I believe Justin Jacobs' dad followed suit on this comment, basically saying that, look, Justin wanted a change. And Terry Roberts right now is getting Power 5 offers. Justin Jacobs did commit to Oregon today. We saw Keegan Johnson commit to Kansas State today. So there is reason to believe that those guys just want to change. But I understand NIL is a factor now. So we just have to wait and see what happens with I don't think Roberts is coming back. Arlen Bruce ain't coming back, I don't think. Be very surprised if he does. And they got to get some guys. Corey Crooms, wide receiver from Michigan, Western Michigan, was on their big board. He's off the board now, committing to Minnesota. And let's see here. Seth Anderson's still on the board from Charleston Southern. So we'll talk football another day. Will wants to know an update on Kate Martin. Have not heard. I know Lisa Bluter was hopeful that it was potentially just a bone bruise, but we'll have to see on that. Rick wants to bring up Brock Purdy. He played pretty well. The Bucs aren't very good. Let's just say that. They're under 500 now. But that Kyle Shanahan offense, it's conducive for quarterbacks to kind of plug and play. CJ Beathard had some good games under the Shanahan offense, but I give Brock Purdy credit. He did play well today, what I saw. Bob says, Corey, did you watch Peyton Sanford during warmups? How was he shooting? I didn't pay a lot of attention to that, Bob, but when I watched him shoot in warmups, he appears to be shooting the ball well. Different when you're out there at full speed. And again, I think he rushes his shot at times. So that's a great question, but I would not be surprised if this is a mental thing more than anything. And if he's shooting too quickly, then that might be mental in and of itself. So, again, they'll work with them and try to work through it with them. Appreciate you being here, Mike, for the support, as always. Do want to give a shout-out to Iowa Floor Covering. Their Tough Core Click Together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring being sold at $269 per foot with self-installation. Visit iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. You see their logo up in the upper corner here of the screen. Consider supporting our sponsors, including Iowa Floor Covering, because when you support our sponsors, you support us here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. All right. Want to see if there's any more reminders for people that I need to get to before we hang it up for the evening. As you can see on the bottom ticker, all of the podcasts, all of the shows, live shows, longer segments are available via From the Hawkeye to the Storm on Spotify, Apple, Google, Anchor, and more. You can subscribe there for free. And another way you can support the show, I think I think the show with Gary Close, let me just say that I think the show with Gary Close is the best Hawkeye basketball show out there, frankly. And it's not nothing to do with me. I just love what Gary Close brings to the table. And I enjoy listening. Sometimes I go back and listen to Gary's insight after the fact via the podcast on audio, because sometimes you gain more, especially as I'm doing the show live. I can kind of decompress and listen to what Gary Close is saying. And it does sort of help to kind of get a better understanding of what's going on. I can say that. All right, folks, let's wrap this up. Let's get you some final stats before we wrap this thing up. Iowa falling to Wisconsin on this Sunday. Final score, let me get back to the top here. 78-75 in overtime. The Hawkeyes with a miracle shot by Patrick McCaffrey. I shouldn't say a miracle shot, but a miracle sequence. The Hawkeyes nailing a three to send this game to overtime, but the Hawkeyes falling in overtime. 78-75. Just couldn't get stops in that overtime period. Wisconsin for the game shot 50.8%. The Hawkeyes 42.2%. Both teams struggled from three. Iowa 26%, Wisconsin 27%. Iowa did shoot free throws a lot better than Wisconsin, and they got to the line a lot more. So anybody complaining about officiating, well, Iowa shot 17 free throws, Wisconsin 11. I know that doesn't tell the full story, but it is fact of the matter here. Turnovers, Iowa with 15 on the night, Wisconsin 11. Those were that was certainly a storyline. Wisconsin outscoring Iowa 18-15 in overtime. A lot of points scored in a short amount of time there in overtime. You think about that, 18 for Wisconsin in 5 minutes. So if we're talking about a 20-minute half, that means they would have been on pace for 72 points. And, you think about the end of regulation, the game was, what was the game at the end of regulation? Wisconsin had 60 points in the regulation. So they were scoring at will in that overtime period. And I don't think it was all because of Iowa's defense. Wisconsin hit some tough shots. We find here fast break points, Iowa, no surprise here, 10-2. If they could have gotten in transition more, would have been helpful. Wisconsin definitely beating Iowa's bench and scoring. No surprise. Iowa was riding a short bench with Chris Murray and Aaron Eulis being out. 22 bench points for Wisconsin to Iowa's 5. Mentioned Philip Rebracha, 10 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. The guy struggled at times tonight, but still battled and gave him a lot. Tony Perkins, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Patrick with 24 big points, 7 boards. Boy, he was tremendous late. Made that 3 to send it to overtime. Was great in overtime. And I feel bad for him because he had that last shot. Went in and out, would have sent it to double overtime. And then, of course, Connor McCaffrey, 17 points, 10 boards, 5 assists. Again, all those guys, they're just a collective effort to get this game within reach there when they were down 8 with under a minute to go. So just came up short. Let's get to, I think, our final caller of the evening. Yes.
Hey.
DC, how do you say this?
DC Glazer.
DC Glazer.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of hip
What?
and cool.
Well, thanks.
Yo, DC Glazer. I like it. Where'd he go? We lose him?
Say it again.
Did I lose you? Are you with us?
Yeah, I lost you.
How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful, man.
Good.
I'm wonderful. I'm better
Okay,
than I was an hour ago when I started this show, but
That's good.
yeah.
I mostly wanted to ask how you have been holding up. How have you been holding up, Corey? Like doing these streams constantly with every bit of little news information that comes through. I understand that you feel responsible to update the crew, like the Iowa crew and all these people, that have been privy to your podcasts or privy to their own Google searches of what's Iowa up to? What's Iowa up to on the women's basketball side, the men's basketball side, the football side? Like, what are people doing? You have to respond. Like, how much pressure do you feel?
Is that a real question? Are you actually asking me that question?
Yeah, like, do you feel a lot of pressure? Do you sleep well? What kind of nutrients are you getting? Are you drinking enough water?
Do any of us really drink enough water, DC?
I think so. I think some of us do, but not enough.
Yeah, I would say this. First of all, I appreciate the concern. This is a busy time of year,
Yeah.
right? This is a busy time of year with the transfer portal.
Yeah.
I can tell you that it slows down a lot once we hit April, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do appreciate your concern. And do I feel pressure? I don't know about pressure. I feel an obligation to an extent, but this is also work. This is a business, and I hope that everybody is appreciative of the work that's gone into it, because there is a lot of work that goes into this, not just from me, but from other people.
Yeah. And like, I can see that. And it's not just pressure of like Iowa sports. Like this season, we've got Thanksgiving, we've got Christmas, we've got family. And so how do you juggle family with your professional obligations?
Well, I think the same way anybody juggles it, right? I mean, it's a challenge, right? You're supporting, you support a family, but you got to keep working its place. So it's a constant struggle. I mean, this world really can zap you of energy and zap you
Yeah.
of things that are for strength and energy for things that are more important. But we're all battling that.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I appreciate you calling in just to express some concern. I appreciate that, sir.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you're okay, because selfishly, I want you to keep rolling with this. I want you to keep going and going and going, like the Duracell rabbit or the Energizer bunny.
Yeah,
And
I was gonna say, I think you're. I think you named the wrong battery company there, but I get you. I get the gist.
yeah. Well, good, man. Keep on going. Just wanted to say hi, and yeah, keep going. I'll keep listening, and thank you for what you do. And Gary Close is awesome. I was thinking about Gary Close. He recruited Chris Kingsbury for a few years. Like I saw this on Wikipedia or whatever, and I loved Chris Kingsbury because I love to shoot as well, and so I remember going to a CBL game for lacrosse. I think Chris Kingsbury played for lacrosse, and I went to the game, and one of my best friends had the hookup, so we hung out with Chris Kingsbury after the game, and he was talking about how his shoes didn't fit. And as a 12-year-old, I was like, I'll take your shoes. I'll take your shoes. Your shoes don't fit? He's like, here, yeah, here, have them. And so he gave me his shoes.
Wow.
After a CBL game, and my friend got really mad at me because my friend had brought me to the game, and I ended up getting Chris Kingsbury's shoes when my friend wanted the shoes. And so he was mad at me for months and months and months. And I guess the point is, I loved Kingsbury. He was great. He set a lot of records. He was a hothead. And I think hothead that's kind of a good, McCaffrey, Kingsbury. Like, there's a lot of hotheads in the lore of Iowa basketball. And I just loved that I was able to meet my favorite player at the time, who shot the ball like I did. And I felt really bad, really bad that I took the shoes when I should
Ari
have.
Gold wants to know, where are the shoes?
Oh, so one of the shoes I used for the invention convention in 6th grade at St. Mary's in Manchester, Iowa. I used it for the invention convention, and I took the tongue of the shoe and put a zipper in there so you could use it, to put like a wallet and money into and stuff like that. And I thought it was a novel idea, and I used it for the invention convention. And so one of those shoes I repurposed for that, and the other shoe I gave back to my friend Alex, who had brought me to the game, because I felt really bad. I felt really bad that I took the shoes. But right now, they've gotten lost in the move for,
And you're out in
time to-
California, right? You called in before.
Yeah. But we lost both shoes, but it does not mean that those shoes don't hold a place in our hearts, I'll never forget that.
I'll say this about Carter. I said this earlier in the show, and I know we're kind of taking this show in a different direction, but
Sure.
Carter came in tonight and made a big three. And I thought he, to come in this game at a big moment without any experience really in any stage, I thought he played well, under control. I made the comment earlier in the year, DC. I said, Carter Kingsbury might end up playing significant minutes because the kid can shoot threes and he looks like a decent ball handler.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely the case. I think he's got a chance to get some minutes, especially with injuries. You just never know. We saw Austin Nash log some significant minutes for Iowa. We saw Riley Till log significant minutes for Iowa. Jordan Sterner, if you remember anybody, is it Sturmer or Stormer? Sterner. Anyways, yeah, back in the early 2010s, 11, 12, somewhere in there.
Sure.
So walk-ons can play in this system at Iowa, and Fran puts trust in them.
And, Carter's got bulk. I don't know what his conditioning is like, but he has bulk, and he was steadfast on the defensive end. Like he was there, he was ready, he was committed, and he had juice. Like after he knocked on there was a sequence where he affected the play on defense, got a rebound, and then ended up knocking down that when they called a timeout. And I'm like, oh my God, this kid is his dad. And that's a really good thing. And
he is built different. Like he ain't Austin Nash. Like he's
stocky. He's stocky.
He is. And so was Chris, obviously.
Exactly. But like if Carter is able to condition himself and like run the fucking court run the court, like he definitely deserves more minutes.
I thought he was okay defensively. I mean, I think he's going to struggle. He gives up something as it relates to athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what's, I think, smart about Fran playing him tonight? And I know some fans didn't like him playing much in the second half. The smart thing about it, not just because they needed to with injury, but Wisconsin's not going to blow you away with athleticism. There are some teams that you're probably not going to get away with playing Carter Kingsbury on the defensive end. But I thought Carter held his own against this Wisconsin team. So good on Fran for getting him some experience tonight.
Definitely. And it's like pick your matchups. Like with the more athletic teams, if the less athletic core of the other teams is on the court, give Carter some minutes. If you're playing, a slower like Northwestern team or something like that, give Carter minutes. Like pick your spots with them because he can contribute just as much as anyone else in those small increments. Like when you know how to manage the game to give the right players the right amount of time in the right situations, you're gonna do better than you would otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And confidence building for Dasonte Bowen. He's another guy that started tonight. Wouldn't have, played 3 minutes the other night against Iowa State. Started tonight. They needed him to start tonight, and didn't play great. But he's a 4-star kid who's going to be he's the future of Iowa's backcourt. So we forget Tony Perkins. This is his first year playing point.
Mm-hmm.
He is a junior.
Yeah,
and could he take advantage of the COVID year? No, he couldn't. This is his junior year. I don't believe he can. So, well, no, he could. Hold on a second. Let me I guess he could technically. So he'd be a reg. So he has 2 years after this if he wants it. But I'm sure he has aspirations to play professionally somewhere. My point is, DeSante Bowen is going to be the future here at point guard, and then Brock Harding will be the
Yeah.
guys in a couple of years. So
Yeah.
it's good to get DeSante some really good experience. That is the curse, the blessing and the curse of having guys injured in big games is you trial by fire for some of these guys. And Tony Perkins had the same thing happen. You remember his freshman year?
Yeah.
There were guys out. He had to step up. I remember him on the road in Indiana having to play a lot.
Yeah,
and
man.
I'm sure that's paid dividends for him now.
It's all about people stepping up. And two things about Brock Harding and I forget. But DeSante, Brock Harding and DeSante. Like DeSante, I love that no matter what's happening with him, no matter if he's in the groove or not, in the scheme of the game, like his complexion stays the same. Like his mannerisms stay the same. He's focused. He cares. Like he wants to do the best. And speaking of Brock Harding coming in, it's so fun watching his highlight videos on YouTube. Like he's got game. Like
Yeah.
he's quick. He switches
By the way,
quick.
not to interrupt you, he was there tonight, by the way.
Really?
I didn't see him, but he was there. Owen Freeman was there, and Cooper Koch. He was there as well.
Did you observe them? Like how'd they feel?
No, I think it was Tom Caker that tweeted that out. That
Okay,
those guys were there.
okay.
I didn't see it. I wasn't really looking for them, but I know
Sure.
they were there.
Cool. Yeah, man. Yeah, these people, like all these kids, want to be a part of the program. It's a good program. I've said it before, but yeah, like I hope to see them all again. Like anyone who can stay. If Tony can come back, that would be awesome. I mean, obviously, Chris is gonna go to the draft most likely, but I even like dream of him coming back. You know, I just love the idea.
Let's just play the dream game for a second. Imagine if Keegan Murray had come back.
Okay.
On this team, imagine with Keegan Murray and the development we've seen from Philip Baracha and the development from Chris. Imagine
Yeah.
if Keegan's back this year, this is probably a Big Ten contending, if not favorite team right now.
Yeah.
They are
Easy.
so. And
at that point, it just comes to managing playing time and managing it. I was going to say egos, but I don't think a lot of them have egos. And that's what's beautiful about this team. But go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I just think it's, we go back to Fran, and I've been on the record that I do think Fran deserves a lot of credit for his ability to develop. We like to give Kirk Ferentz credit and Phil Parker and those guys in football. Let's give Fran McCaffrey credit for his ability to develop, because I know he was instrumental in Luka Garza's development. He was instrumental in Keegan Murray's development. Aaron White is a guy that we forget about. I mean, that guy was maybe the best player in the Big Ten that year.
Yeah.
Never made the NBA. Has had a really good career overseas. I know Jared Utoff was, in Wisconsin, and ended up being an All-American in Iowa. There's been a lot of those examples, and we tend to overlook those because you're frustrated about March and their inability to get to the second weekend. Let's not forget too that Keegan and Chris. I mean, Chris didn't have any Division I offers. DC, none.
Yeah.
Keegan Murray had one. It was Western Illinois.
Yeah.
Iowa takes both of them. Remember the other two guys in that class? They were Tony Perkins and Aaron Eulis. And Aaron Eulis has still got a lot to prove. Tony Perkins is a starting point guard right now, and he's a darn good one. Yeah. I understand he sometimes gets himself into, I think he over dribbles at times, and he's turned the ball over at times, as has Aaron Eulis. But in hindsight, those two guys that a lot of people were not in on, along with the Murray twins, that's a great class. And you got to give Fran credit for identifying talent and developing it.
Maybe that's the thing. Like, development is underrated when it comes to the college game and coaches. Like, a lot of the top 10 coaches perennially or annually, whomever you're talking about, like, they want to maintain talent. Like, they get those 5 stars from high school that could shoot to the moon. They could have gone straight to the pros at the outset if they wanted to, but now they can't. They have to play a year in college. And so it's people like Fran that help develop as opposed to just maintain egos. Like, instead of maintaining egos to help your team, Fran is developing kids who have gratitude and care and want to make a difference. He's not maintaining egos. He's developing.
Yeah, I would agree. DC Glaza, appreciate you being here and appreciate you supporting the channel. And we'll keep appreciate your concern about me as a person. Always appreciate that from people.
Drink water, eat your greens, get some sleep, talk to your mother. See you next time.
All right, DC. Appreciate it, sir. All right, folks. Appreciate everybody being here this evening. And we'll be back. I want to give a quick shout out again to Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. If you have insurance needs or are interested in seeing what he can do to help you save money on your rates, give him a call. All right, let's get rid of this comment so we can get to. There we go. No, there we go. Let's try it again. One more time. There we go. www.bradvanmeter.com, or you can visit him in his office at 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Get a great quote on a variety of insurance deals. And again, great stuff, folks. The biggest thing for me, Brad Van Meter, great guy, and has supported this show. And look, when you're choosing an insurance agent, you want to have someone you can trust. You want to have someone who's taking care of you as a person. Trust me when I say that Brad Van Meter will take care of you. Again, 515-256-6480. And when you support our sponsors, you support us. Make sure he knows that we sent you over there from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Excuse me, sent you over there. It's getting late. It is getting late here. But again, thank you to Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm in Des Moines. And Iowa Floor Covering, you see their logo up in the corner. Again, check out their stuff. Folks, stay tuned because I'll have more coverage for you, Hawkeye coverage via the transfer portal news. We've got more basketball stuff coming up. We've got Iowa basketball next week on Saturday. We got Iowa Southeast Missouri State. The women will get back underway on Sunday. Have to look at the schedule. They play UNI. They play the Panthers of UNI, so that should be an interesting one next week as well. But as far as the game this evening, yes, Wisconsin defeating Iowa 78-75 in overtime. The Hawkeyes falling at home. They'll need to get one back by winning somewhere on the road. I think they'll do that. This team is a tournament team. I believe that at this point in the year. But a lot of basketball in front of us. You got 2 more non-conference games, and we're full bore ahead as it relates to conference play. Thank you to Gary Close for joining earlier. This show will be podcasted, as each and every show is here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So search From the Hawkeye of the Storm on your favorite podcast platforms. Check out our description for more ways you can support the show. Appreciate all of you folks. You're all great and wouldn't be here without you. Have a great night, folks, and we will talk to you soon.